The biggest piece that I think that makes PMs at startups successful on the leadership level is introducing gut instinct into their prioritization framework. Like that's the hardest card to use, right? Because you not only have to convince yourself, but then you have to convince everyone around you, and you have to convince the market, the analyst, etc. Right. But if you talk about good product sense and having good product sense as a leader, what it really comes down to is like, how often do you make the right call? Are you batting 50%? Are you batting 75%, et cetera? Like if you can put yourself in that top 10% category, you're going to do well in your career. And I think at a startup, you got to have gut instinct.
Hello, and welcome to Somehow I Manage Product Teams. I'm your host, Naveen Pichandi, and I'm on a quest to have conversations with product leaders to uncover how each of them skillfully wield the art of managing people and products. I'm joined today by Faraz Jamal, Director of Product at Banyan Security. Faraz and I were colleagues at VMware, and someone that I've worked pretty closely for a few years, and I've even watched him transition into product management. Faraz left VMware to join an enterprise B2B security startup a few years back and has symbiotically grown with the startup in its early stage growth. We spoke about how to go against big fish being an early stage startup in an enterprise space, how they prioritize, make decisions, and some hot takes on making gut-based decisions. I wanted to get Faraz on this podcast as I felt like he was well poised to share the stark differences that he sees and the challenges as he's seen both sides of this, where he was with the big fish and now he's swimming as a small fish in a red ocean of enterprise B2B. Let's get into it.
For management, press 5.
If you're really interested, it is called Somehow I Manage.
Hey Faraz, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Naveen.
And for our listeners, Faraz and I have worked together in our past at VMware, and that's kind of how I know Faraz. So when I typically kick off my episodes, I ask tell me about your product journey, which I still will, and I want you to kind of walk me through your journey. It's just that I have known Faraz and have seen him kind of move into product management my time at VMware. So I know a little bit of this story, but still, I guess let's kick it off, Faraz. Tell us a little bit about your product journey and your current role at Banyan Security.
Yeah. So I'll kind of take it at two parts. I'll kind of talk about I think one chapter of this career into product is getting there, right? Getting the at bat to be able to be in product. And then I'll kind of talk about, the last couple of years transitioning from more of an individual contributor type of role into, product director and leader at a company. I think just a little bit of the early days, like, again, like a lot of people that go into product management, it's always a interesting path. It's never straightforward. I love technology growing up. Growing up kind of when the internet's kind of booming, was always great. I always thought that if I made technology my job, I would start to hate it. So like when I went to college and at Georgia Tech, I actually focused on the science aspect and actually was trying to become a dentist. And in that journey, I did work at a healthcare software company and started to get into software implementation consulting.
That's crazy. I've known you for many years. I had no idea that
Yeah.
you were going to be a dentist. I got to ask the question, is technology also sometimes like pulling teeth?
I tell myself it's like, okay, yeah, I realized that technology was the right thing for me, but it could have just been the paycheck and getting that for the first time out of college. And I don't know, but that's what started it. I did some healthcare consulting for Epic, which is a big EMR medical record software company. And then I moved to where I met you at kind of Earwatch. I was doing more, again, software consulting. And, the challenge with what I realized with consulting in that stage is it was very like repetitive. There's different types of consulting. Like I think the management type consulting is it's different problems, different companies, but then you never see the end result. Like it's always proposed this thing. It could work out great, but you're always removed and you're on to the next thing. With software consulting, I like the fact that you actually, you help someone get to these milestones and you're involved all the way through the success. But it was repetitive. And what I liked about product is I kind of worked with when you were a product manager and the entire team at VMware at Airwatch was it was the N+1 type of thing where it's like you're always building and then kind of next thing is building on that. And there's always new, exciting experiences. It keeps you interested. It kept me interested, at least in my career. So I made the switch transparently was not easy. It was, people always say that you want to either switch at a company that, or industry that you're currently in, because it's easier to just, the software or, the industry and you're just learning a different skill set. Or you're a product manager and then you switch to a different industry, but you're doing product management, you're doing the same role. But doing both at the same time is really difficult. So I opted for like, okay, try to switch within product at an existing company. And, it was there was challenges to it. I think challenges that, some out of my control, some in my control, right? Like trying to really understand what it is to think like a product manager. When you're in a consulting mode, you're always thinking about, your yes first. Yeah, you want to do this. Here's how you do it. The product manager, it's honestly, that's like how you kill your career is saying yes to everything and not being able to prioritize effectively. Learning how to solve problems. I went through those same exercises where it's like, how do you build this for, this persona, and kind of going through that, coming up with your prioritization framework and making sure you kind of think about all the aspects that are involved when you're building and shipping product. So once I got a hang of that, I did make the switch there and kind of that just kicked off the last 5, 6 years of this journey. So that was the first chapter. The second chapter is kind of the more interesting, fun aspect, which I want to spend. I mean, kind of why your podcast is made is, how to, somehow I manage product teams. So I guess for kind of the listeners and just in general, right? I feel like when you're in the individual contributor role, right? Very straightforward. It's similar to kind of move up, straightforward and similar to move up between associate PM to PM to senior PM. You're working on your product sense. You're working on your, analytical and your execution, but you're doing them with higher impact projects and higher scope. So you kind of start off with low impact, low scope. You kind of move and start to work your way up until you're at the point where you're operating with high impact on high impact initiatives with pretty broad, ambiguous scope. That's kind of the key that, you're ready to be a manager in a lot of aspects, but timing and opportunity, still kind of come in to play there. And then, what I would say is like, as I kind of, got to that point in my IC career, it was okay. Like I'm ready to do this management thing. And, standard kind of moving to manager, right? You're working on in those IC roles, you're working on one type of work, like your features, right? You're just building, you're executing on features, you're working with engineering team on features. Your scope gets bigger and bigger, but it is still narrow in a sense. Now, as you kind of transition to a product leader, it took managing not only the feature work, but okay, now we're building features, but we also want to do things to grow and create stickiness and within the customer base. There's that type of work. We want to expand to different markets or expand to adjacent products. So there's that type of thinking. So you're kind of thinking just in way broader, right? From a product perspective. Then there's the standard, instead of focusing on, just being good at your job, you have to train and manage people up. You have to, figure out how to invest the resources you don't, and allocate them and influence people, etc. And I think that what ties it all is like, I realized that, doing all those things gets you to the point where you can be like a product leader, like just baseline product leader. But then what makes it good, I feel like what makes a good or great product leader is you take that foundation and you just take a jackhammer to it. And it's like rubble. And it's like you're standing, but like you still have to do all these things, right? And the economy is not great. You have all these political leadership alignment issues that happen at large companies or small companies, whatever it is. But yet you're still there with some like strong mental fortitude for the team, for yourself, and doing all those things. And like, that's where I'm like, you see people who do that in these challenging environments. And those are the great leaders. And that's kind of like where I'm trying to get to and continuously build that skill set, is to be able to do that in this crazy world that we live in.
You couldn't be more spot on in that big step function jump, as you spoke about, from being an IC to being a manager. And it is sometimes a little bit like the jackhammer analogy that you gave, especially in an early stage startup, which is kind of where you became a manager, right? You were still
Yeah.
an IC at VMware.
Yeah.
When you moved over from being an IC to a manager, what were some of the biggest challenges that you immediately faced?
Yeah.
What were things that you had to learn? What were things that you unlearned?
Yeah. When it comes to a team, like doing this at a startup, right? You're involved, you've touched every part of the code, you've touched, all the customers, all the use cases, you've laid your fingerprints all over this thing for a couple years. And now you still have this mentality to like move urgently, you don't want to slow down. You want to keep going. You want to, push out more product. And what you kind of naturally do is like, you don't let, you don't let the people that are on your team kind of, you know, grow at the rapid rate they need to grow. You still kind of like keep your hands on things, and you just want to make sure that things keep moving at the same pace. But at some point you have to realize that you got to let go, and realize that you are at the success of you or the company is how well you can kind of manage the team and do your job as a leader. And it doesn't linger for too long, but it does linger a little bit. You have this pressure from executives, from the market, from customers to do these things. And sometimes you slip a little bit as you get people onboarded. In the end, it's exponential, right? They're getting their feet wet and they're able to kind of, you know, be autonomous and still be accountable at the same time.
Now, in terms of the segment or the kind of company that you're in right now, when you were at VMware, you worked on an enterprise B2B software. And
Mhm.
now at Banyan Security, you're also in enterprise B2B software at a very high level kind of bucket.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what Banyan Security does.
Yeah. So I'll keep it simple here, right? Like we are kind of a next gen platform for securing and managing risk around like modern workforce access. People have changed how they work. They were in the office and they're hybrid. Now they're like fully remote. People have changed how they actually, protect their applications. At first, they were in the office completely in a data center. Now they're kind of managed by AWS and GCP. Now they're kind of everywhere. And those trends kind of happen. And it's about seeing those trends, understanding the problems that may occur with how the world is shifting. And for us, it's just there's distributed assets, there's distributed people, and there's unique challenges to that. And we're looking to solve those.
I know when we speak about B2B software, there's kind of a spectrum depending on the size of business that you cater to, right? Can you elaborate a little more about who your target customer segment is? Is it mostly enterprise B2B, or are you looking more like down market, smaller B2B customers? Like, who are your typical target customers for Banyan?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we have obviously different customer segments. For us, it's, we're looking primarily at enterprise type of customers, right? I think we have, like a lot of products, right? I think we are bought in a little bit to the product led growth and the bottoms up motion. So we have like a free edition of our product. And we try to use that for kind of lead generation and those type of things. But primarily we're going after the enterprise customers and mid-market customers who are kind of used to those traditional sales cycles. And yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So I wanted to go with this was being an enterprise B2B startup. That is, if you're mostly focused on selling to those, larger customers, or your buyer, your decision maker most times is a CIO or a CISO.
Yeah.
It's a typical top-down selling motion, right?
Yeah.
And while this sector signs all these big checks and your annual contract values are big, they're sometimes the hardest to sell to because it it's not about the core product sometimes, right? You sometimes just need to have the bells and whistles checking the box that
Yeah.
meets your compliance standards on one hand, and on the other hand, you have these large incumbents have these distribution and pricing power that can squeeze the competition out of the picture. And so I'm just curious, how has your journey been at Banyan Security, being in an early stage, going against the big fish? And I wanted to start this with this question because
I'm assuming a lot of this kind of has a downstream impact in terms of your strategy and how you think about products, especially products in early stage going against some of the incumbents in enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good question. So, and you hit on some of the key challenges. So in my opinion, I think, you know, leaders at this stage is remember like why your company exists. And the company like exists because you're not building for small existing problems. You're building for this big shift in how the world is working or how people are working, etc. Right? We're not here at this company to just go toe to toe, like on features with, you know, a large incumbent like Microsoft, like Zscaler, et cetera. Like we're painting a picture for the future, right? And that I think that's very important because it helps in different aspects that I'll touch on, right? So like I think the big thing is, you know, why are you here? Why does this company exist? What are the problems that we're looking to solve? Because these are problems that aren't necessarily solved in the way that we think they should be solved at this date. So that's I mean, let's talk about the challenges, right? Obviously, when you're going around, you know, against like larger companies, even though you're trying to, you know, paint a picture for this different future, going against like, you know, resourcing gaps, like or concerns, like you don't have as many resources, obviously, as some of the large players in the market. One thing that's interesting is you kind of learn how much pull on the analyst side that these big companies have. So that's another challenging aspect that I didn't actually understand until getting to Banyan. I think the biggest thing is like switching costs, right? Like what is the pain high enough in this future world for someone to switch now versus, you know, later versus maybe I'll just, you know, stick with what I have and they'll get to it eventually. So like those are definitely all challenges that any startup that's going against like the big fish face. From a product perspective, other than iterating kind of our vision and mission and making sure that we can articulate why we are different and why we are building for this different world that and it's the right thing to do is making sure, you know, you focus on customer pain. I think it's so easy to get caught up in the first feature, you know, conversation with some of these companies and they will out execute you 100% of the time. They just have more resources, you know, and they'll do that. When we talk about how we compare to some of these big players in the market, if everyone follows this like standard, you know, everyone has their prioritization framework, right? And their prioritization framework always starts from you know, what the company vision is, you know, who are we building this for, what the strategy is, those type of checkbox items, right? And you go through and you say, you find a feature or solution and you run it through your prioritization process. And it's almost, you know, checklisty in some ways. The biggest piece that I think that makes PMs at startups successful on the leadership level is introducing gut instinct into their prioritization framework. Like that is the hardest thing that's the hardest card to use, right? Because you not only have to convince yourself, but then you have to convince everyone around you, and you have to convince the market, the analyst, etc. Right. But you know, if you talk about good product sense and, you know, having good product sense as a leader, what it really comes down to is like, how often do you make the right call? Are you batting 50%? Are you batting 75%, et cetera? Like if you can put yourself in that top 10% category, you know, you're going to do well in your career. And I think at a startup, you got to have gut instinct. You got to look at all the factors that may the prioritization framework that may say, hey, we shouldn't do this, but then say, hey, like I know customers, I know ancillary details outside of this framework. And I think it's time to take this bet or it's time to go down this path. And then you rally everyone around you. So I think that's a big piece for the team when I'm like, hey, like we're looking at this, look at our vision, but trust your gut, you know, like at least speak, let your gut speak at least, right? Don't suppress it. And on the go to market side, is another challenging thing. Because as much as you want to paint this picture of we are the future, who do you think you're going to go up against at customers over and over and over again? And you're going to get the other side of the story, right? So you still have to understand, you know, where these, you know, the competition, the big fish in the market are going. You still need to be able to equip your sales team with like playbooks to say, hey, If you run into a Fortune 1000 company, here's how we, tell the story. If you run into a mid-market company, tell the story this way. And you fine tune those knobs where you can still get the point across, but your sales team doesn't feel like they're just selling something, some future and we can't build the bridge to where the customer is, right?
You kind of set me up to what I want to ask next. But before that, I think you gave a pretty good nugget in about gut instinct, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when people think about gut instinct, they think it's on the other end of the spectrum of, having data informed decisions, and gut instincts are, it's almost like a black and white binary. One is good, one is not good kind of. I feel like over the years where I think a bunch of these consumer platforms, which are data informed in a way that they make every decision, A/B testing and things like that, gut
Yeah.
instinct is, I feel like, relatively underappreciated in that sense. So people just think, oh, if you have gut instinct based decisions, you're just winging it. Which I've lately realized that's not the case, because I have made a bunch of gut instinct decisions, and most times I've been right, thankfully. And when I went back and thought about it, I was like, was it just lucky, or did I really know about something there? Which I heard this somewhere else, I read this somewhere else, which is gut instinct decisions isn't just that you're winging it, essentially. It's just that there's very little data, but you've pattern matched enough in the past few times that you've seen similar situations where you're making a decision based on some of your patterns you've seen in the past. That is, collectively, you develop experience to make those decisions and you feel it in your gut. It is data informed decision. It's just not statistically significant yet.
Yeah.
So you make the decision, you move on, you probably will collect your data and you go back and say, do I have enough data to go back and confirm if my decision was right? And that's the only way to move forward. And so I just wanted to say that because you're absolutely right. And I think we should almost not discourage having gut-based instinct decisions, which is because you have to make a call sometimes, and most times you have to make a gut-based instinct call because there is a lack of data to help you move in a direction A or B. But you queued me up very well in the end, which is around, what do you let your sales teams go, pitch and sell the future in some sense, right? And I spoke about this in my previous episode, and I think there's this perennial struggle around this balancing act between sell what you build or build what you sell in B2B products, right? And B2B products are notoriously accustomed to presenting roadmaps to our customers that are understandably volatile, yet sometimes waived to help, nudge our prospect or customer to kind of make that purchasing decision, or a renewal decision if they're already a customer. And sometimes these deals are hinged on, or these deal closures are hinged on some slide in the PowerPoint that kind of says we're going to go build something, and now we've closed the deal and you have to wave a magic trick and bring that to reality, right? So there's this balancing act that I feel like B2B teams from every stage will mostly do, especially in enterprise B2B, I feel. And so, how have you been able to manage this balance at Banyan Security, particularly at an early stage company? Because most deals are a big deal, right? Pun intended in that sense. So,
Yeah.
just curious how you'll manage it.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. You're touching home on this one. I just, for a side note, like I think when I was in consulting at VMware, I used to hate it so much when you would get a professional services agreement and you're like supposed to implement something that's like not even there, it's like half there. And you're like, how am I supposed to do this? It just got, somehow sold and it funnels its way down to professional services or customer success. And they have to kind of figure out to implement something that's not even there, half promised. So I feel for that, for anyone watching who's kind of going through that kind of scenario. That's when I was like, oh God, why did they sell these things that don't exist? But now at a startup, I formulated a different opinion. And what it comes down to is I think sell what you build what you sell. I think it's both, but it's just different times, different situations. And I'll give some examples, right? When you're growing your stages of the company, you start to look at product market fit expansion. Like you're going to expand to different markets, or where like the more relevant example is you're going to add adjacent products to the existing market, right? So with adjacent products, with anything, you have to control your investment. And especially in times like this, right? You don't have as much cash or resources to take those big bets. A lot of times you want to make sure you focus on things that are going to have a strong return. And because you're figuring out where your runway is, you're looking at the next round, et cetera, and you're just managing costs in general. So right now, I think what you sell is not to just dupe the customer, right? That's the main thing here. It's more about making sure that you can get to a point where you know what the scope of work is to finish out the build. You've built a little bit to demo it, to have the customer conversations. And I think there's times where if you do it right, you like have the engineering team, the sales team, product, and even customer success on the same page to say, hey, you know, we have this new solution or this new product or new set of features that's coming out, that event that we could get out in 3 months. Let's put it in the deal. And then we kind of build it. And you're transparent with the customer as well. So it's a little bit of both because you don't want to overcommit and like build all this stuff and build it. Like it goes back to data points. At a startup, you may not have all the data points that a large organization may have. And you could trust your gut a little bit, but like your gut can't take you through an entire feature build and just be like, these are all the knobs that you build. These are all the use cases, and you just kind of ship this thing and expect it to work. You gotta think someone on your earlier last episode said like kind of mitigating risk as a product manager. Like you got to mitigate risk along the way. And you got to do enough where the sales team can sell it. You can kind of demo it before you actually build a full-fledged product. And one other thing I've realized is it's okay to lose a deal because you don't have the functionality sometimes early on because you validated. It's like, hey, like you pitched this product, someone wants to, or this, solution, this set of features, a customer wants to buy it. They want it now. Like realistically, we don't have it. Like it's not going to be built for 3 months, 4 months. If they're not willing to wait, that's fine. But we validated that's needed. We validated that there's opportunity lost because of this functionality, and we should hit the ground running. So I think that's another part that was like interesting for me is to think about it that way is like the earlier you get something to a customer and you get feedback on it, the faster you know if you're on the right path and the faster you kind of validate your gut instinct and your prioritization.
Got it. And if I were to pull on the thread a little bit, right, which is especially in an early stage company, you're optimizing for one, staying alive, making sure you are profitable, getting revenue, and making sure your top line is growing. Growth is your top priority in most of your meetings as you think about it, right? And so, in that kind of a scenario, what sort of decision frameworks that you use to decide what to build sometimes? And I say that because if I were to throw a big wrench in terms of your sales teams coming in telling you, hey, there are big customers. If we do X, Y, and Z, you're going to get these deals. And that'll hit your goal for your target ARR that you want to reach for the year. And you also have, I think in some cases, a founder vision for what the product needs to be in some sense, or your CPO vision of what the product needs to be in some time. How do you wrangle these two together, or how do you send them through a mixer where your output is the right decision? That is, sometimes you got to say no to one of these two people, right? If they're conflicting in some way. And how do you make those decisions?
And I'll add to that, like, even at the board level, there's conversations about like, but take all your features or all your engineering investment and bucket them into existing customers versus growth versus, you just have to segment them in certain ways and you have to present that as well. Working with the go-to-market team do you know who your happy customers are and why they're happy? In this scenario, it's of like prioritizing certain aspects of work, it's always a balance, right? You always want to be developing features and solutions that are going to be used now. You want to develop features that are obviously people are going to pay for. You know, if you know what happy customers are and what that segment, like if you talk all about customer segmentation, if you have these segments that hey, if I build these X features, they're going to be happy, and happy customers turn into referrals, turn into case studies, turn into being able for the go-to-market team to actually, again, add fuel to the fire and be able to just hit the ground running. You get more people in the pipeline for this stage. You want to be able to, and not necessarily not think big, but you want to make sure you balance that out with, hey, here are our customer segments. Like make sure our features align with these customer segments, right? Uh, there is upsell opportunities for sales. Sales always, needs that. How do we, sell more functionality, solve more problems for this customer? And then at the same time, from a founder perspective, right? Again, they're out there pitching the company, the vision to investors, to partnerships, etc. So you gotta at least think about that kind of stuff and understand where you would go and make it somewhat real, but maybe not go ahead and build everything you need to make the vision come to life.
If I were to sort of switch gears a little bit, and especially in the current sort of macro environment that we see, I'm sure there's a lot of belt tightening and a lot of focus on making sure every single thing that you're building and focusing on has some sort of a direct line contribution towards your top line, or reduce your
Sure.
bottom line in a way so your margins increase in some sense. And in the state that you're in at Banyan Security, I'm curious, how are you handling and leading this product org and making those decisions in terms of people as well as product, and how you go and sort of handle this current weather?
Yeah, yeah. So I think like with any product manager or product leader, right? Everyone has their own analogies to like simplify, everyday day to day or kind of activities that they go through or their experiences, right? So one thing that like I think it was like the founder of HubSpot or something said about their conversations with Elon Musk is like Elon Musk said, everyone in your organization is a vector, meaning they have a magnitude and direction. If you have everyone, regardless of the magnitude, obviously magnitude is the impact this person has moving in the same direction, you get kind of maximum impact, maximum output, right? But if you have people moving in different directions with different varied impacts, it's just suboptimal in general. So I think like that weirdly is such a simple thing but it like puts a lot of clarity in my head around like alignment and making sure everyone is on the same page. So what I guess like for this year and even like kind of coming into last year, it's like, how do you get the maximum impact from you and your team? How do you make the maximum progress? And then what is the maximum happiness level of the company? Like prioritizing the person, like how do you keep people happy in again, go back to the foundation analogy, like someone's taking a jackhammer to the foundation and you definitely want to make progress. You definitely want to have impact. People need to be happy and it's correlated, right? Unhappy people are probably not going to give you, probably not going to make a lot of a big impact. So from the impact perspective, when kind of leading the team, it's very much, I think Ken said this in your last podcast was, aligning from company vision, and strategy all the way down to what outcomes we're trying to achieve and give some autonomy to like, hey, what do we need to do to get to this outcome and make sure that everyone feels that, you like they are impacting what the company achieves directly. That is the beauty of a startup is you have that direct impacts, regardless of how senior you are. So making sure we're always coming back to the outcomes for maximum progress, like as like, how do we continue to make progress as a team? I think pragmatism is important, right? In the grand scheme of things, what our product strategy is, what can we achieve this year? And then sure, there's some big bets we may want to take, but like, let's just focus on like milestones. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves until some of the uncertainty flushes out. And then like the third aspect is like, how do you get maximum happiness? Like, I don't think I have a solution, like a necessary solution for this, but like one thing that I know sometimes when you start to lead a team, you start to do things that you wish, you were done when you were an individual contributor. Right. And like one of those things where it's like, I don't know if it's like directly asked like this, but understand why people are here at the company. A lot of times that changes from where you start to year one to year two, etc. Like what is your purpose? Like, what do you want to get out of this? Why are you here? Why do you want to make an impact? Because you realize that like, people come in with, there's a standard set of reasons people join a startup. They want to move quick. They want to learn. They want to fail fast. Maybe they want to take a shot at something and make it big financially. Like that's always like everyone's always thinking a little bit of that. So you can find out which people are there for the right reasons just start to address that question more consistently. And it's not even like hey, I want to weed out people that aren't in it for the mission or like to the vision or like the, this solving the big problem in this market. But it's more about like, they may realize it themselves, right? That it's like, hey, like I'm not in this for the right reasons. And I thought I was in it for this like, big bet and like for a big payday someday. And now the foundation is has some cracks in it and they're getting filled, but it may take some time. And I just don't want to write it out. Right. And that's very important. That is like the most important thing to know as fast as possible, not for like, okay, like to manage them out, but like also just like, hey, like, this is what we need in the organization is we need people that are going to have that maximum impact, push for progress, bring up the morale in times where it's not down. And sometimes, people realize they're not cut out for it and that's perfectly okay. And that's what I've kind of realized is like addressing that question periodically and then keeping it in mind when you kind of manage that person or people.
That's actually a good framework, and I think it's generally applicable for any stage, quite frankly, just because they're foundational in nature. And one more question related to the macro environment. I think there's a bit of shakeup in many large organizations. Folks who are out either looking for jobs or even who have a job are looking for, moving to either an earlier stage company or a startup, perhaps. And you went through that transition, moving from a $50 billion, 20,000 people company over to an early stage startup. Maybe break it down for us for, an objective list of the good, bad, ugly for a transition like this, right? And also maybe any advice that for anyone listening who are looking to make this plunge for what they should be looking out for.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's a lot to unpack here, but I think from anyone kind of looking to a startup, I mean, I'm like very biased because I think they're amazing. I think you learn so much and you get exposure to so much. And if you're that person that's going to go above and beyond and proactive and sees problems and just wants someone to just wants to tackle them, right? And propose something, you're not going to have anything holding you back. And there's an energy at startups that is unmatched. And I think that another thing that's important to know is like, people for a lot of startups, people are choosing to be here, right? It's not like they have golden handcuffs, in this case, right? Like this is a choice. And what that means is you run into less scenarios where you're working with people that may not have the same motivation level as you, or maybe at different phases of life where you're like pushing really hard to get something out quick or, this crazy solution, this big bet, etc. I think if you are looking to make a big impact right away, I think that's an important reason. I don't think you should do it for money. It's like assume a startup will fail. Just have that assumption going in. So if you assume that, then it's like, what do I learn? What opportunities and challenges do I have to solve? Like that's what you're going after is opportunity. Because if you get opportunity, if you get a challenge that you get to take on, the output of that is learnings. You're not going to just go in there and learn. And then I think you just have to be open-minded and be able to, pitch in and be hands-on everywhere. I definitely think there's people that probably go into it and aren't ready for the grind, and you got to be ready for that because, it's ebbs and flows. The lows are low, but then the highs, you feel the highs because you're contributing directly to it. That customer that signed that big contract, you talked to them 4 or 5 times, you demo the functionality, you led some, feature, etc. And it all resulted in this big, massive win for the company. And that feeling is unmatched.
This is great advice, and definitely hear you on, the grind, and you have to be mentally prepared for it before you even make that plunge.
Yeah.
I have a few rapid fire questions for you, and I'll start with the first one that I ask almost every one of my guests. Your most recent wow moment using a product.
Honestly, this is going to sound really crazy and I'm maybe late in the game with this, but we moved to this neighborhood in San Francisco and we have this like pizza place that we call to order pizza. And every time we called them once, we put in an order. And then now every time we call them, they're like, "Hey, Faraz, do you still want the slice of cheese pizza, salad and the drink. And then you're just like, yes. They're like, great. They'll be ready in 5 minutes. So like, that was like, for me, I was like, that's awesome. Like that is like the best type of, service or product that I've ever kind of seen is like and now sometimes I don't even want that, but I'm just like, yes, it's so easy. It's just, they call me, they know what I want. I say yes, and it's there. And I never experienced that in any restaurant before. So I think that it counts as a product. I think that's the last kind of wow moment I've had.
Yeah, that just sounds that sounds very Silicon Valley to me. Maybe the next time you call, you should probably also ask them, "Hey, what product is this?" I don't know if the person who's picking up the phone will know, but I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
Some sort of startup that's testing it out, but this sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so the second question is, if you were not a PM, and I know you said you would have been a dentist, if you're not a PM and a dentist, what else do you think you would have been?
Oh man. I don't, I'm not a PM and not a dentist. I think, I mean, honestly, I would probably do something sports related.
Oh,
Sometimes when you go on these vacations and you do these like tours or like boat tours or random things, you just have like this like friendly person that's leading the tour. They're
right.
living on this little island or this area and they're just having a great time. So that's always like nice. I mean, obviously money, it doesn't have to be like you have to be okay with, operating a different lifestyle, but I would love to just have that type of, you have the interpersonal relationships with people coming in and out and kind of doing something that's just fun. So that's always seemed appealing to me.
Yeah, I definitely am with you. Every time I'm on like a vacation, I guess once when we went to Hawaii, we did this surfing lessons, and I was like, oh wow, won't it be an amazing life? You just sit, go surf every day.
Yeah.
Sure, your earnings won't be that great, I'm sure, but you're at a phenomenal place, such a beautiful location, and
Yeah,
you just get to surf. That's about
exactly.
it. But so yeah, I'm totally with you there. Last one. If I gave you the opportunity to rewind and change two things in the past, left everything else the same, just change those two things, what would you change?
Oh, in general, in
In
my
general,
life,
in
in
your
my,
life, general life, go back and go fix something. What would you fix?
oh man, that's a good question. I think one of them is personal. Like I would definitely like, I spent 4 years of college, studying sciences to become a dentist and I don't use any of that information. So I wish I kind of redid those 4 years with something that's actually transferable. And the second thing is probably like, again, like world, like obviously like you would like to take away some of the biggest disasters in the world. So like a 9/11, you could definitely take that away. Like that would be where I would focus is, there's no right or wrong answer, but trying to unwind some of those tragedies the world has faced.
I think for me, if I were to think about it, it was pretty close too, because I did my undergrad in electronics and communication. My grad school was in industrial and operations research, and I'm a
Yeah.
product manager now. Nothing to do with what I learned for what close to
No.
6 years. And so, yeah, I feel like there's like a pattern. And every time I go to LinkedIn and I find what people who studied psychology or political majors, and they're
Yeah.
all like directors, VPs of products. And
Yeah.
so,
People that go to like, just like you see people that just go to DeVry and they're just like, they went to DeVry, they just got some community, like, and people look down upon DeVry because, again, not a real college, I guess, or like a lower tier community college. And then they're like CEOs. They're like, yeah, they're like, they've proven that none of that really matters. And that's always interesting.
this has been great. I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed, I think, stuff that we spoke about. Where can people find you on the internet for us?
Yeah, I'm mostly on, I would say, just LinkedIn for like the public internet. I have an Instagram. Thinking I'm on the edge of signing up for Twitter. I don't know why. I think it's time for me to jump on that train as it crumbles, but LinkedIn for now.
Got it. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if it's too late for you to jump on Twitter. We'll find out.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna change for the good or the bad.
Exactly.
But yeah, this has been a blast. Thank you so much, Faraz, and wishing you all the best on all your endeavors.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Naveen.
Great. Thanks, Faraz.